And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. You can find out more by going to pioneer.com/Canada. And if you're listening in the US, just stop at pioneer.com. Unless you want to visit the Canadian site, that's fine too. But we welcome you. Okay, let's do a bit of a wrap up here. We heard a lot of good things about the crops. Really, there is some challenges. Like we heard from Warren Schneckenberger in Morrisburg, Ontario, on the eastern side of the province. The rain could stop. It's a little bit wet, but Chris Allen, who we just heard from Edmonton, he talked about a generational crop. Ooh, knock on wood, we'll see, and we are hopeful. Let's hear what's going on around Saskatoon. This week's Pioneer Area Agronomist joining us is Colleen Redlick. Hey, Colleen, how's it going?
I'm great, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are the crops looking in those parts?
You know what? The territory I cover, I think there's tons of optimism. So, I go up into the Northeast, and unfortunately, we've had a few crops wiped by hail last week that were coming and looking really good. And there's going to be some recovery and some babysitting for guys to do up there to maybe try to bring them back. But overall, I think there's tons of optimism. I just met with my whole team today from around Saskatoon, and really, I don't know if we're saying generational crop. I don't have a big piece of wood to knock on yet, right? So, but compared to last year, just the mood and the excitement that everybody has over the crop and, our new hybrids and talking about tours today and getting growers out, we just have a ton of optimism about what we're going to see in the field. So it's a lovely change from 2023.
Yeah, and grower tours are a lot more fun when one, the weather is nice, and two, we've got something to show besides,
yeah,
here's some more drought for you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And growers, like you said, optimistic, very optimistic about what's out in the fields. I would say that a little bit not as optimistic about the markets as we heard from a few of the farmers. There's definitely some concerns there, but we're kind of getting into that hail season, and Saskatoon got touched with some hail, did they not?
Yeah, we had, I didn't see any that was right around Saskatoon, but we were talking about the Langham Ag and Motion site. My agency up by Borden, she had a few fields that got hit by Blaine Lake area. So, there was kind of a swipe kind of north of the city. And then, like I mentioned, that northeast, Carrot River, obviously there was a big, issue with the storm that went through there and some damage. It was all over the Facebook pages. And then Aylsham we'll be thinking of our growers up there that, had those great crops coming and now are going to have to manage them a little bit. But that's farming, I guess, is what one of my guys said to me today. So that's what it is.
Yeah, true enough. So now that we're off to a better start that honestly I think we anticipated, right? If you think back 60 days, we were hopeful, but we were kind of in the prove it to me, show me kind of mode. Now what we're hearing and seeing out there is everyone's trying to get spraying done, which is been frustrating because I keep on hearing from a lot of producers about the wind. There's a lot of top dressing going on, for sure. On the spraying front, and this is like, I know elementary agronomy, but make sure we're paying attention to the label and the rain fast, and just there's so many decisions that are being made at this time. Just be careful when you do maybe push things a little bit. Be careful.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of those conversations, right? It's just guys and gals, they need to get into the fields, get going quick, and some of those fundamentals sort of go out the window, right? So lots of the conversations we've had just, with your Liberty, you want a hot, humid day if you can get one, trying to plan those days in. Had a few conversations with some of my producers where, if they have both Liberty Link and Optimum Glide canola, and it's been cooler the night before, obviously, if you have a near frost event, the recommendation is 3 days before you spray again. We all know realistically that's not happening. But if you do have to on a cooler day, spray a product, we know that the glyphosate products are more tolerant to those type of conditions, right? So we've got guys talking about that, just how they're managing those spray days and those windows. And then a big one too, and it sounds kind of ridiculous, is how many guys have been phoning neighbors and saying, hey, what kind of canola is that's right beside my canola? Because it's a little breezy and I'm going to be spraying, right? So neighbors are maybe becoming friends and wanting to have a big block of the same HT all in one, which maybe is something you don't plan necessarily for, but they're finding the benefits to that. So yeah, making sure you're, like you say, following those labels, doing all the best practices, and doing your best to not drift your neighbors out has been a big one this year too. So
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it a little hard when you get together for curling in the winter if you've done some
an
bad
awkward
cooking.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're on the same curling team. Like that's super dangerous. One of the things during the commercial break that you mentioned that I hadn't thought of is that because we have been under this, pretty significant dry bias over a lot of Western Canada, on and off, over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've been sort of trained in our minds to make decisions based more towards the drought side of the equation. And we're seeing this year, because we've actually had some rain, we're seeing higher plant populations than typically we have seen because people were seeding for drought conditions. Is
Mhm.
that bad? Is there a negative side to that? It's looking pretty carpety out there, but what are your thoughts?
It's definitely looking carpety. And I know we were walking some fields yesterday with one of my agencies up by Meath Park, and we were just talking about that. He was like, "Man, this looked really good from the road, but I get in and it's a lot of little plants." And we didn't throw that many squares down and do some counts, but I mean, just the eye test told me, that's more than that 5 to 7 plants that we're targeting with canola. And like you say, it's not that anyone did anything wrong. It's just you have to figure your survivability out before you have really all the information. So I know a lot of guys were dialing back their seeding rates a little bit as seeding persisted, and they started to realize like this is the best seed bed I have had to seed into in a decade for some of them, right? So you get more plants coming, you get a higher plant population. Like there's nothing you can really do now, but just thinking about how you're going to manage that crop. So as these wetter conditions persist with canola, we think about sclerotinia, right? It's not a disease that most guys have seen be a real yield robber in the drought years, but this crop is looking like it could be a pretty big, thick one. So, how are you going to manage that? When you have more plants in there, you're going to get that humid microclimate, right? That is going to have those sclerotinia conditions. So we were definitely talking about that today, getting into the field, taking a look, and then also just standability. Lots of guys, that's a little more on the radar now with straight cutting and stuff like that. So having that conversation that, if this hybrid sees some lodging, that might not be the hybrid, right? That might be just you were a little bit overpopulated. So it's great news all around the fields. I don't want to be, doom and gloom, but sometimes even when things go really good, there is a little extra management you need to think about, right?
Yeah, good point. Thicker canopy. Watch out for that sclerotinia in the petal drop. That's actually a very in that thick canopy. Very good point, especially if we are getting the moisture. We've got that humidity inside that canopy. The other thing we learned on Monday night's agronomist episode when Dr. Jim Tanzi was on the show, cabbage seed pod weevil populations are expected to be high. So scout, everybody. Hey, Colleen, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here for the Farmer Rapid Fire.
You bet, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great stuff. And really appreciate Pioneer Seeds Canada for being our exclusive sponsor of our Thursday program. Make sure, like I said, you go to pioneer.com/Canada and you check out Viatude as well on the Corteva AgriScience website. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.